It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. We're going. Awesome. Back for another podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Today, we've got Chad Juttner joining us and his little pal, Shemp, or whatever his name is.
Otis.
We got Otis and Ben Story's joining us again.
Hey, everybody.
And we also have Amanda Jameson joining us. And it's a good thing because we're talking low code today. So we have 3 low coders on here and Chad. So I kind of want to talk about a little bit of the evolution and into where we're at today. I think the 3 of us all started with SharePoint and the stuff that ties into it. Back in the old days, and there wasn't much. When someone asks you what low code is, what's your response, Ben?
Oh, my response is it's development that requires little to no code, usually using some sort of drag and drop technology on a canvas that you can build business solutions in, ranging from full scale enterprise to smaller business processes like a leave request or, onboarding a new employee could be built in a low code application. There's just so many different things, and it's such a wide net because there's just so many low code tools out. So, it's just always fun to talk about it because it means a lot to a lot of different people. So it's fun to hear the different opinions about it.
I look at it like, hey, it's something I can do. I don't have the programming brain. I don't have the skills and patience and all of that. And I didn't get started doing that early on. And but I took to the low code stuff. So when SharePoint Portal Services 2003 came out, luckily that was just a quick stepping stone to 2007, which had the SharePoint Designer workflows. And I think that's really what kind of pieced it together. And I think, Ben, you and I go that far back.
Yeah, InfoPath and SharePoint Designer workflows is really where low code got started. And I mean, you could even take it back to Dreamweaver building web pages if you really, really wanted to go super deep. But, in the context of today, it's that's where it really got going. And those tools definitely served a purpose.
I did class registration systems and a number of different solutions. A lot of it was using it to move data around, things like that. Now, Amanda, you do Power Apps development and stuff like that for us. I've seen demos of some of the things you guys have done, and it's super cool. Stuff that I haven't done yet, which is awesome. Where did you kind of start with low code? What was your entry point?
Well, I guess I'd say I'm like the newer kid on the block, where I didn't come in 2003, 2007 because I'm not old enough. I wasn't even graduated high school yet, but I came into it was about like 2013, 2015. SharePoint Designer, I've done a little bit of dabbling with InfoPath, but where my meat and potatoes were, and where I really felt like I thrived and enjoyed, was more of the automation part, because one of my biggest values is efficiency. Like, if I can do something better and more productive, not just in my own life, but in work or for a client or a friend or anything, like that's the path that I want to go down. So for me, it was very much solving small business processes, because in many of the previous employers that I had, we already worked within, teams, and we had a little bit of SharePoint going, but it was just at like the infant stages of, we just want to have a document library. And it's like, well, don't you want to have an approval that goes through that, so you don't have to do the email processes and the keeping everything in your own desktop file to do that? So I think the document management part of it really shined in a lot of the aspects where I was able to use it. But what I really enjoyed was the automation point, is being able to kind of be that person behind the curtain to say, oh, you want a notification, you want an app to be built that does all those things for you, so you can go about your day and use your brain for what it was meant for, instead of those kind of menial tasks. So I really enjoyed that part of it. And now that we've gotten more dived into the app side of it, it's really sky's the limit, because we have the Canvas side of the app, we have model driven side. So depending on what the function or the solution that we're trying to build, we have so many options. Whereas before, it was what's out of the box is kind of out of the box. And then from there, you really had to have some and in my experience, a lot of coding knowledge to understand and make those customizations that you wanted to. Whereas now it's kind of just a feature that's already available to me. And it's just my job as the engineer to make it pretty and do the functions instead of like actually making it work on the back end, because it already has all that framework set up for us within the Microsoft universe.
So it's kind of a big jump start when you're building apps. Also, to be able to do those quick hits quickly without having to necessarily have a CHAD on hand. You know, I come from a tech support background, then I get into SharePoint consulting, and that took me, you know, way down the road. And a lot of stuff is just having those tools on hand. So when somebody needs something, you got a way of doing it. You know, we had a way of doing new hire paperwork after we locked down. And it's because we had Adobe Sign set up, thanks to Ben. We had Nintex set up, thanks to Ben. And we were able to put it all together to go paperless.
Well, that's where I feel like the rise of low-code platforms has really kind of really helped businesses, because no matter the size, you know, whether you're enterprise, small, medium business category, you know, these platforms really help accelerate your development. Sometimes they're used as, you know, even prototypes, but then there's also things like what we can do in a very quick manner and go paperless in a weekend, like what we had to do when the lockdown happened. Like, it was literally, we have new hires starting on Monday, and we need to get them all the paperwork. I mean, just think of when you walk in the door at any company, how many things are you signing? You know, right? Right. So it's like, how do we get all that done now in a virtual world? If we didn't have low code, we would have been up for about 48 to plus hours, probably trying to build something to get that paperwork out the door.
So, Chad, you do high code.
Yeah. Let's call it that.
Yeah. You code. And you've been doing it for a long time, and you work on pretty big applications.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Those are all accurate statements. Yeah.
What's stuff that low code just can't do that your stuff can?
Well, that was going to be my question to Ben and Amanda is, how often do you hit a wall and just need the one thing, the one plugin, the one, I don't know, utility that the tool doesn't provide, right? And then, does that happen often? And then, I mean, I'm imagining a lot of our low code tools are extendable to certain degrees, right?
Yep.
So when you hit that wall, are you seeing that more and more, or less and less as the tools mature?
Personally, I've been seeing it less and less, but it still happens. Like, I think, and that's one thing where, like, when I'm in doing an assessment, like, that's really an important part of our business, is just seeing what these legacy applications are, where they're built. And a lot of it really comes down to back-end complexity. Because I would say, you know, we can tie to SQL, we can tie to different online databases. If there's a super complex underlying data structure and super complex like user interface, you know, low code might not be the thing for you. You know, it might be able to get you halfway there, but then you might get restricted by some of the restrictions that are in low code. I mean, because there is, I mean, every platform, low code platform has its restrictions, as encoding does. You know, has its restrictions. As, you know, maintaining all that legacy code, I think, is a really big one. But from a platform standpoint, you know, I've done assessments where I've, you know, been honest with the customer and said, you know, this probably should be a Azure web app, or maybe we should do this in AWS, or whatever their kind of tech stack would be that fits their solution. So we're not trying to fit the proverbial square peg in the round hole just because we want to use low code.
And I think from a technical standpoint too, that when we're getting down in the nitty gritty of building things and solving problems, it really comes down to the customer to say, what's the business need that you're actually trying to solve? Are you trying to, you know, download this file, get it signed and sent, or you just need one part of that process completed or automated or with it in the app? So I think it a lot of the times comes down to the conversation that we have with the customer, not just after we've, you know, booked that client, but, you know, beforehand, like Ben said. But once we do book the client, you know, really getting into the requirements and the technical aspects of it to say, yes, out of the what I usually say is, yeah, out of the box we can do that, 90% of the time. But if we can't, there is that out of the box is like the no code solution, and then there's a low code solution, which is me customizing it in some fashion. Whereas, let's say when I was in like old SharePoint pages, when I wanted to do customization, there was a lot of code that I had to do. Whereas now it's so much more drag and drop and intuitive that I don't have to worry about that. So I'd say like the gap is being filled a lot more, especially when it comes to different ways that we can connect out of the system. I find every single day, I've even asked Ben the other day, I'm like, I need to go out to this system to pull something. He's like, oh, we've got a connection for that. You don't have to do a whole API, call and all that stuff, which I don't even know what that means because I'm a low coder and I don't care to learn it. So I'd rather have the connection. So in my mind, we're expanding the connections and everything outside of the system to the point where, like Ben said, if we can't handle it out of the box, there is more than likely a customization that we can do with a low code solution before we jump to that high code stuff like you do.
And I think and it comes down to as well, like how big is the business? What's their IT department look like? Do they have a bunch
security.
of just like network people? And security. Because, one thing that I think where low code shines is supportability. It's easier for us to hand off a low code application to an organization who might not have a super strong IT department than it is, a heavy coded app to someone who doesn't have a strong IT department. Like, and when I say a strong IT, I'm talking just like developers, because we could talk citizen developers until we're blue in the face, but really what it comes down to is just finding the people to support the app. And it's easier for us to help train or for someone to learn a low code tool set to help maintain that app once we walk out the door than I think it is a super deep heavily coded app.
That's one of the challenges with what I do, right? Like we build some pretty complex applications for that service an insane amount of business requirements, sure. And then walk out the door, right? The maintainability of things that I build is a huge problem, right? Because there's especially today, right? Like I'm pulling in libraries, open source libraries. I'm pulling in third-party libraries left and right. Those have security requirements. Those have vulnerabilities. You got to keep all of that stuff up to date. Building an application, the way I build applications, is necessary once you reach a certain level of complexity. But
100% it is.
It's also like I think the costs the hidden costs of what I do are pretty high, right? Handing off a solution to a support team is just that handoff alone is hours and hours of work. Maintaining the solution once it's in production is hours and hours of work, and then upgrading and making changes. I mean, the nice thing is you do have unlimited options for customization and maintainability, right? Like there's no brick. I'm not going to hit a brick wall ever, right? My brick wall is really probably just how smart and how adorable can I get with what I build,
right?
But the cost of that is, and I think this is what low code fixes. Like the cost of what I do is everything I just said, whereas low code relatively easier to hand off and give to a team and say, hey, here's what we built. Here's your manual. Mm-hmm. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah, and to the point on cost, and this, we went in and scoped out a project for a customer, and they were looking at doing just like your standard open source development, and we were looking at a 12-month plus project, and then they started exploring Power Platform, and they're like, hey, you guys do Power Platform? What would it what's the cost estimate to build this application on the Power Platform? And I think we did it in 4.5 months. So it was a very significant cost savings just from a developer, implementation standpoint too. So like it's just and again, there's pros and cons to all this stuff. And there's definitely needed. Both are needed in our industry. It's just trying to find the right things for the right tools.
In that instance, Ben, would you think that it would be we're kind of on, I would say we're on that sliding scale between low code and full code. For that particular case, what was the breaking point for them to be like, oh, we can do this? They're just them exploring? Or were there other, like, obviously I could see the cost benefit because you're not
Yep.
spending as much time, but was it, when they did the exploring, was it less complex than they actually thought? Or was it just something that they were okay with doing, maybe like the bare bones first and then enhancing later?
Yeah, we did a real quick proof of concept to kind of prove it out, and it wasn't quite as complex as what they made as what they thought, and they just didn't quite understand the full capabilities of what Power Platform and Power Apps can do for them. And once we kind of sat down with them, explored the different options, and we did a real quick prototype, that's just something that we could do pretty quickly with Power Apps or any kind of low code tool set. They're like, yeah, this will work for us. We understand now a little bit more. So going forward, just because once they kind of saw that, they're now exploring what else they can do with low code tool sets. And kind of when every project comes in, they kind of are looking at some certain criterias that it's like, yeah, this one's probably something we should do with our open source tech, or this is something we could do with 365 and Power Platform.
I think just how you operate is different between low code and software development. Chad, I mean, it's whatever you guys do, the code reviews, and you have dev test release, and people work on what branches of stuff. I mean, you have a way, it's the way it's done that you've been doing successfully for years, and that's done the same way across software development. At the beginning when we were developing stuff, they wanted to kind of put us in that same box and have 3 SharePoint farms set up so you could do dev, test, and release and change control and all this other stuff around it that just wasn't necessary. But you also have things like the BA role. Since there are limitations in the different low code products, it was really good to be in the room as the one developing the apps, because requirements would come up. People had specific ways they wanted things to happen. And sometimes it was, we can make that happen. It's going to work like this, though. Is that okay? And being able to make, those quick shifts instead of waiting for a BA to come back. And then, we still had BAs involved. But it was like we wanted to be in those meetings as well.
And I think it's important to be in those meetings too, right? Because we're the subject matter experts. We know what these tools can and can't do. Yeah. And the business loves to dream, and they dream big.
Yeah.
So understanding and helping them is really what it comes down to, right? Like, how many meetings did you have just kind of helping them understand the capabilities of things, Kyle?
That's just it. There's a big educational piece. When someone says, Chad, we need this thing developed, he's gonna cut code and he's gonna do his thing.
Right.
For us, we're in this framework. I'm not a developer as much as I'm a configurer of things. And so educating them on, why that's going to work for them, the benefits, kind of how it's going to work. Some other things is like, how well has it been adopted? Like the document storage has kind of been the sweet spot for SharePoint since it came out. But now with the Power Platform and, all the advances in these tools, that's expanding. And then it's going into Teams, different ways of using SharePoint without using SharePoint. So I think that there's a lot of education, there's handoff, there's education up front. Is this the right platform for us to use? Right. And in one case it was yes. In 6 months, when this feature you got to have comes out, they said it's going to be in 2 months. Well, this is going to take us a year. Right. And they said 2 months. Well, 6 months it'll be here and we'll be able to do it. So we still think we should move forward because we've already seen demos of this in action, and it's coming. It's going to happen. So just weird things like that, going to happen in that process.
And there's definitely still change management that still needs to happen during low code projects. So don't ever do the change management piece, because you're building new software, just going to be a little bit different. And it's probably going to hopefully simplify your business process and take those legacy apps and, you might be on an Access database or Excel spreadsheet or Lotus Notes or whatever type of thing that might be. Low code solutions, I think, really help simplify the integration and a modernization of a lot of those legacy products. Because we can use a lot of out of the box business connectors, so we're not writing custom APIs. They're already built for us in a secure manner. So it's a lot of fun to take advantage of a lot of those different things.
Chad, with all the different things that like an AWS can do, all the different widgets or functionality, are you getting kind of dragged into some low code?
You're on mute, buddy.
You're on mute, yeah.
I was going to bring that up earlier. Some of the, like AWS is starting to present itself almost like a low code-esque environment, right? Like there's a lot of AWS services that you can string together in a way that, you can, you can build to a degree without having to code too much within AWS. So yeah, I am getting dragged into that a little bit, and I don't mind it. I mean, it's like I said before, like one of the principles that I have is like whatever I'm building has to be supportable, right? And that's kind of selfish. Like I don't want somebody to call me a year later and say like, hey, we're dragging you back into this thing that you built forever ago because nobody understands it. So yeah, like I happily use low code environments when it's appropriate for the business problem that we're trying to solve for.
Do you think it helps kind of speed up what you're doing too a little bit? Like your acceleration through being able to dabble in those different aspects to cherry pick it a little bit?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Like the velocity that you get from using some of these tools versus the velocity you get if you just stayed in a comfortable, like known environment. Some things will go faster, but once you hit that brick wall, constantly try to time box, like, all right, I hit a brick wall with a low code tool. How much do I look into staying within that low code environment to solve this, and how much do I like try to solve this with like an API that almost all low code things I would imagine these days can consume. One of my favorite low code things that used to exist was actually a Yahoo project. So Yahoo had this thing called Yahoo Pipes. This was probably like 2003, 2004. I think Amanda was still in high school, you said, right? But it was a really cool, like their entire premise was like, hey, every API, we'll just treat it like a pipe into other APIs, right? So like you could take the output of, and this is back when the web was way more open than it is now, right? Like everybody produced an API or an RSS feed or some sort of open protocol to access whatever their content was, right? So you could build out some pretty slick apps. I built, within an hour, you were able to build, like I built this thing that helped notify me across all the airlines when trips to certain destinations were reached a certain point, right? Which is now just a feature that you can sign up for. But like back then, it wasn't a thing. So I love the environments when it's appropriate, and I love how demonstrable they are, right? Like I can demo low code walkthroughs easier than I can like take somebody through how I built a complex linear algebra solution to a business problem, right? Like that's all. It's easier for it's more digestible to our customers, I think, than just hardcore development is.
Yeah, because the drag and drop or more visual aspects of these low code tools, I think, just kind of helps bridge the gap between different levels of knowledge and comfortability of building these apps. Because, I do think that, more and more non-technical people are getting into development, space and using the low code tools is allowing them to try something new and see if they like it. And around the supportability, that's really kind of comes into play as well as we can spend a month or less training some people, or there's plenty of free trainings out online that different levels of whatever knowledge can go through and learn and expand and grow within different aspects. Because what's really fun is talking to the people that are in the trenches of like the finance department or the HR department or whatever. It's like talking to them to figure out, okay, how can we really help you? How can we help you streamline your work? And how can we make you more efficient in your job so you can get more work done in less time? Like Amanda said, like that's just I think one of the biggest aspects and pros of building low code tool sets. She does it all the time.
I do.
I think we've got a saying we call, is it fail fast? Fail and fail fast. So I think that kind of speaks to the agile nature of it in its own self, because we don't necessarily have to do the whole process of reviewing the code because it's so visual. It's already dragged and drop on there. And then if we want to even do code reviews, we can do them with the customer and then make some, in the moment changes, which has always been my favorite thing, is just have a brainstorm session with whoever the customer is and give them, what your rough draft is. I don't know if Chad even is allowed to do rough drafts in that sense, but I can pull up a rough draft of a SharePoint page and an app and an automation in probably less than a day. And then from there, it's, what do you want to change? Let's make this work for you. Let's make it the most efficient. Have we thought about this instead of that? Instead of having, a once a week meeting with the customer to say, this is what we've done. Not to say that we don't still do that. We don't, we still present our demonstrations and opportunities for improvement. But I think when it comes to like a project management standpoint, we can be so much faster when we go through all of the processes in themselves.
And even like working with Kyle on a lot of we eat our own dog food type stuff, and just the support that I think that Kyle gets from an IT standpoint from using our low code tool sets, I think just helps his job. It streamlines things and stuff like that from an internal standpoint as well.
I'm always listening for opportunities. You were working with our finance director at one point and got a glimpse into her process for doing all the end of the year revenue, PTO sharing, all of that stuff. And that started the ball rolling. And then 2 years later, she's able to take a vacation in January, because it saves her 2 weeks a year. And it's like, wow, that's a big one. But little things like little signups we do, those little forms, real simple. Working right now on a little tool that lets the CMs add people to groups. I'm automating consistency between our different platforms so that our titles and managers and all that information is in SharePoint as well as Salesforce, and coming from the source of truth, updating itself, cleaning up after itself. So things where we would do manually, like, can we automate some of this stuff? And then just make it easier to gather information. So it's never a week goes by, where I'm not touching one of these low-code tools to do something that helps out.
Well, and I think it also kind of even could get into a little bit of cost reduction, especially thinking about like licensing, because like I think one of the things where low code can kind of shine is just being a little bit of a middleman, because you can buy one license and use a connector and connect to, different CRM tools or whatever you want to connect to. And then that's just your one license to do things versus licensing 15, 20 different people that need to go into the various apps to do work. I just think low code can really shine being that middleman or being that workflow engine to help tie all these cloud-based systems together to help you move your data from one place to the other without doing, on the data entry point, multiple data entries into multiple systems versus just like one app. So I think that's just and I think we use it too internally as well in a lot of our processes, whether it's our recruiting or CRM tool or whatever. We're connecting them all with different various service accounts to help automate those things.
Well, there's a security piece too, where like we can create a form or workflow that lets people do certain things they wouldn't normally be able to do. Because it's purpose built. All they can do is this one little thing through this form. But what's happening behind the scenes requires admin access and custom roles and all of that stuff to make sure that it can do what you need it to do, but not too much. So they're able to do stuff and we can kind of box it in. We can set it up so they can, like adding people to distribution lists, instead of giving them the rights to directly add and remove people to distribution lists or security groups, things like that. We can automate some of that. We can also use it as a cleanup tool. So, when someone leaves, their account gets deleted, and 6 months later you see them in a security group, you see them in a SharePoint list. It's like their ghost is still around, and you can use little things to do cleanup on that stuff, which is what I use it for. So I'm always trying to automate so that I have more time to do other things.
Oh, for sure. I try to find ways to automate almost anything that I can to help save myself time. So it take me half the time, 20 minutes to write a workflow that's going to save me hours and hours on end over months as well. Thinking about like the future of development, and we're sitting in this Gen AI space, it's going to, I don't know, I'd love just to kind of get your guys' take on it too, is like low code is going into the future and beyond. Chad, I know you're leading our community in Gen AI, and I just even feel like AWS has some tools that are kind of low code-ish for that as well. So it's fun to see these lines blurred between these different technologies.
Yeah, I think I honestly don't have a good answer to how AI and low code are going to play off of each other yet. I mean, everybody's knee jerk right now is to like slap an AI assistant in every single tool, right? And that might be just as far as it goes with low code. But the ability for like generative AI to actually, earlier we were talking about hitting brick walls with low code, and the ability of generative AI to actually write code under the covers, and help you get through some of those brick walls, that could actually start to get really cool, especially if you build that into a low code environment. Saying something like, I know Amanda mentioned you don't love digging into AI APIs and all of that, but if your low code tool had a generative AI capability to pull that in, then that could help eliminate some of those barriers that those tools have. So I think it's mostly that, like a combination of low code tools. Oh, we lost Ben. Low code tools.
He'll be back.
Generating code under the covers to accomplish, whatever task you put it to. I think that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, and I got kind of to piggyback off that. It's like I see, going like way back to Kyle's first question, it's like I see low code as me being that artificial intelligence or that robot behind the scenes that makes the citizen's life better, but then the AI is my robot in the background that makes my processes faster. So a lot of the times what I've been using it for, and what I hope it will continue to do in the future, is just help make my development faster so I can continue to not hit brick walls. Because every time that I've hit a brick wall, usually I'm going to AI to say, help me figure out where is my typo in this little bit of line that I've created. Because there are some pieces of code, especially when I'm automating, that be not necessarily that I'm writing the code, but whatever that drag and drop has, it's got code behind it. So if I want to do any type of manipulation, I have to at least see what it is. So in that instance, it's nice to know that whatever this generative AI can help me kind of decipher what my errors are and help me fix things a little bit faster than me going to GitHub or Stack Exchange and all that other, or God forbid Google now, that I don't even want to use Google. So I'm just in ChatGPT asking it, what is this error? What is that error? What's going on here? But I think what I know that Microsoft currently has Copilot kind of, like you said, Chad, slapped on to everything. But I think it'd be really beneficial for developers and citizen developers to have a better capability within their development when it comes to AI, because at this point, it's just, I want to create a table. Well, I can ask the Copilot to do that for me, or I can take the 4 seconds and do it myself. So at this point, I don't feel like it's an efficiency in creating, it's an efficiency in solving problems, which is great for us as developers. But I would never think that I would be like losing my job to a citizen developer because they can build an entire app out of Copilot. There's things that they can do, but it really comes down to, what is the complexity of the system? What problem are you actually trying to solve? If it is a citizen developer thing where they just need to do a quick app or a quick workflow, Copilot might be able to help with that, or at least, get it started. But when it comes down to really building and creating solutions, I don't foresee it to be any showstopper in that way. I'd be interested to see if it goes that way, or if that's how it's marketed by others, to say that, oh yeah, this can, what we're all afraid of is it can replace your job or replace this or that. And I don't think it'll ever get to that point.
Yeah, I see it making low-code developers better at using the tools because they have a resource. When I do need a little bit of code or an API, something like that, I can usually figure it out with a little help from my AI tools. I'm probably asking less questions of Peter and for less help to do some of the things. I installed, Stable Diffusion because I had ChatGPT telling me what all the Python errors meant, and then I was able to fix them because it was the first time I had used it. I had no idea what I was doing. Now, that's one instance. That's this problem I see with citizen developers is as soon as there's a curveball and it's not doing the job for them, they're completely stuck and may not even know what to do after that. So, but I also see that the handoff for these tools, the ability for the business to carry them forward, the AI tools give them support to be able to do that. So it makes them more effective, and they can look stuff up. They can, totally agree. If they need to put a new ID in an API, that's kind of technical and difficult, but they could just slap it in there and say, do this, and it'll kick it out. We used to have to write these long web service calls that would have been really nice to have ChatGPT back then.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah. And just, and thinking of like the citizen developer too, there's, every low-code tool will tout the citizen developer, but, in all honesty, like you got to have a little bit of a logical mindset to be able to build these apps. I'm not saying that can't be a learned capability, but I'm just saying sometimes you need the experts to come in and get the first few off the ground for you, just because it's not going to be as easy as what you think. There's some of these apps can be very complex, and if you don't know some of the nuances of how to, patch something or build pop-ups on a screen or show and hide stuff based on certain logical things, like there's definitely going to be some learning curve things thrown at these citizen developers. So definitely think ChatGPT, Copilot help with that. But there's still a need for the enterprise developer to come in and do some projects.
You're looping, you're working with arrays or collections. Right. You're working with conditions, state machines. You're working with a lot of the stuff. It's not, there was this pitch a long time ago that anybody, hey, get this, anybody can use it. And it's like, for how much? Like, how far can they use it? How far are they going to get with it? And it does require experience. It does require, like, if you're going to build a low-code app, if you don't have the experience using that app and building those types of things, it's not going to go great for you. You might be able to get through it. It's just going to take you a while. So I think you don't want to pitch it as this anybody platform, but anybody with an aptitude can dig into it and should be able to learn, but it takes work to get there.
Right. And it takes work to make sure that the user interface is usable too. Because that's one thing that I've kind of learned through the years I'm not an artist. I could paint some
stick. No, your UI stuff is the worst.
Oh, it's the worst. But that's what I'm saying. It's like we got, don't take the UI UX part of your applications lightly and think that your everyday citizen developer or everyday developer is going to be able to build you a very elegant app that makes sense. So just, when thinking about like low code, think about the design, the UX, the usability of it on top of whatever the app needs to do. Because it's just when it comes back to change management, if the thing looks nice and functions the way it should, the change management piece goes a lot smoother.
It really is. It's always about the end users at the end of the day and their experience. People will learn stuff, but if it's not elegant, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't present information in a clear way, structured properly, it's still a problem, whether it's low code or not. Basically, I just translated what you said, Ben, from English into English, but did a poor job of it. We're getting down there. Clock's ticking down. Any parting thoughts?
No, my biggest thing is, for people that continue to explore these tools, and if you're got some legacy applications sitting around, take a look and see what low code can do. Even if you don't, Excel spreadsheets, like if you're copy pasting things through Excel documents, that's a good opportunity to look at what Power Apps and Dataverse can do, or different low code, whatever you might have in your enterprise. So there's a lot of different things that can help out. So just kind of keep exploring. I'm excited to see where low code goes in this whole space.
And I'd like to challenge people to look at their own personal work processes and see, like, where are your efficiencies? Where are the things that what are your actual pain points when it comes to doing your job? And that's a lot of the time, those little redundant things, those little things that take, 5 minutes every single day that you just don't want to get to. A lot of the times, those are the things that we can use low code solutions to help create either a better solution or more efficient, more productive, make your life a little bit easier. So it's not just let's build an app that does everything in the world. There are a lot of small processes that can be improved. And then you think you have one process, two processes, 50 processes that you've improved over the course of time, saves you time, money, your brain power. That too is, I think, really important for us to all understand and continue to try to look for those opportunities. And I know that change is scary when it comes to stuff like this too, but because we're in a online environment 90% of our lives now, it's kind of one of those things where it's going to continue to change. And that's really the only thing that we can be okay with, is that everything's going to continue to change.
Yeah. And there's, I think, nothing. Go ahead. Sorry.
With the current environment online, like, data is everywhere. And I think as the younger generations grow up with this technology, especially younger developers, I think the combination of data being everywhere, AI being what it is and only going to get better and likely going to be embedded into, like, not just like an API call that you make, but like literally embedded into a lot of these tools. I think the confluence of all of these things happening at the same time is going to lead to a situation where, like, development is, low code tools, I think, are going to grow. That whole space, I think, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as AI enables more and more capabilities under the covers. And I think that there's going to be an entire generation of developers where, like, writing Java code for some folks might look like writing assembly to me, right? Like, it just might not be as your first option all the time anymore, right? And we're pretty far away from that, but I think it's on the horizon, and you can kind of conceptualize, like, what, not the next generation, but the generation of after that, like, what that, 2 generations from now, what their capabilities could look like, and where all this stuff could go. It sounds kind of cool and exciting and accessible. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
I would say that there's a lot of little things you can do that add up to a big time savings, and don't be afraid to look into those things. And most of the cloud tools we use, if they don't already, they're getting some kind of workflow engine. And our bench channel, we have a meeting 3 times a week, and that meeting goes out 15 minutes before, in Slack, it gets posted, and that's automated, instead of somebody having to take the lead on that and go copy paste and send the thing out. Just something stupid small like that. It saves a person, they don't have to do it 3 times a week. They don't have to stop what they're doing and shift over to that, do that task, and then shift back to the other thing. There's a lot of little things you can do with these tools can make your job easier, and don't be afraid to do them.
Right. Start small, think big.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Amanda Jameson.
Thank you.
You bet. Ben Story, always good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Thanks for joining us, Chad. Excellent. And I think with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com, or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.